Hi all, my name is Lee, welcome to the channel. So today I'm just going to take you through what I did to mechanically repair this old record vise. It's one of the original ones before Irwin took them over. So let's take a closer look at what I did. So this is more of a show and tell video. I've already done the work, so I won't take you through all of that, but I'll just explain what I've done because this may be useful for some other people out there who like to restore some of the old tools. So this vise was originally my granddad's, and I remember it as a child in his garage. So it's at least 40 years old, I would imagine. It's one of the original record 1-ton vices when they were still made in England. Before the company Irwin, I think it is, took over record. So I've laid out the pieces here, obviously to connect the secondary jaw, the sliding jaw. I've just removed the pin and taken the rear screw off. I've got the handle. I actually had to chop the handle to remove it. So what I've done instead is I've actually just put, I cleaned it up on the lathe and I put a thread in there so I can just put a nut on. And that means if I ever bend it using a bar, I can always take it off and re-straighten it again. But the main part of the repair for this, first of all, I stripped all of the blue paint off. I mean, you can still see some on there. I haven't completely stripped it because it was all starting to rust. And then I gave it a good rub down with a wire brush. But the most important part of this is the fact that the runners had actually worn out and one side was much lower than the other. And therefore, this piece wouldn't sit straight inside the vise anymore. So what I imagine happens just over the years, some grit on one of the runners and the constant pressure, and it started to wear out. So it's actually sitting sideways and much lower than it should be on the corner, sort of like that. But what I found is if I pulled it over to one side, it would actually sit, it was low, but it would still sit straight. So as you can see there, if I push it over to my right hand side there, you can see it sits a lot straighter rather than before it was low and quite wonky. So the things I needed to do first of all was actually take a file to the runners on the fixed jaw first of all. And I had to take one side down a lot lower than the other. The other one had already worn. So this side had already worn out quite dramatically, but this side was too high. So I just got a file in and got them roughly the same height and made them smooth again. I also did the same procedure on the bottom of the moving jaw. To smooth this down and get it level, all I did was I just put a piece of sandpaper on a chopping board, something that was flat, a granite surface, and then I just sanded that down until it was quite level and got rid of all the chips and dents out of it. But the main repair I had to do, this is where the copper came in. So I just took an old piece of copper pipe, I chopped it in half, and then I chopped some long thin strips out of it. It was much longer than this, obviously, to make the repair. So the first part of the repair was getting this to sit upright and straight and pressing it into one side where it was still square again. So I just took a piece and bent it on the side to give it a side runner. So if I show you this, I actually drilled a hole in the end and tapped a hole in the side, and then I just bent this copper round just to fit that. This should allow the vise to be pressed up against one side, the straighter side, and to keep it straight. So that's the first piece. I'll just put it on now just so you can see it. I think the good thing with using the copper is I've already had to take the material down too much, so it sits low anyway. But the copper can just be replaced over time. So in a few years' time, when this copper wears out and it starts to sit low again, I can just change it, put some new copper on there and screw it back together again. So the next job, after I had filed the runners, and I also filed the top as well underneath and got those level, I wanted to put some runners on the moving jaw as well. So the same procedure again. I just took some copper and I laid the copper on the runners and then just tapped some holes to screw the copper in. So now, of course, because I've leveled everything, it fits nice and snugly and nice and square. So let's just complete the assembly. Just you have to remember to put line up the dovetail in there before you just screw it all together. And finally, just to show you the handle, just drilled and tapped in the end, so then I can put a bolt in there, and it means I can remove this another time if I need to. And then we can put the pin in. And it's held nice and straight and square, as you can see. So everything's lined up. It feels solid, it's not sloppy anymore. So finally, I just had to make some soft jaws for the vise. Half a piece of copper tubing, and quite simply just make it longer than the jaws themselves. You just screw that down like so, and then you can just hammer them on. So hopefully you enjoyed this quick video. If you have any old vices that you need to repair, maybe you can do a similar technique to me. So putting a side runner on it to pull it square, filing down the runners and putting some copper to replace the removed metal. And of course the copper is then replaceable in the future should you need to repair it again. Pretty simple repair. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.